So if it's okay, I'm going to hand things over to career development and let them talk about those two subjects. So there you go.
Terrific. Thank you, Lave. Hi, this is Becky. I'm Director of Career Development.
Hi, Sam Wansell. I'm the advisor for career development.
And so today we're going to be presenting two, I would say, fairly concise PowerPoints. One is how to utilize LinkedIn, and one is some general information on resume writing. And I would invite any of you who may be interested in connecting with us one-on-one for a review. Very happy to do that. Just let us know following the presentation. With that said, how many of you do have a LinkedIn profile established?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
I do too.
Great.
Okay. So this may just sort of be a refresher. It's always amazing to me how many industry professionals don't maintain their LinkedIn profile. And so with that being said, we always are looking at this, and we call this in business, both LinkedIn and the resume, what's called a fluid document, which means that it's always going to be changing. So the first step about LinkedIn is there's just a lot to know how to use it. And so we're going to talk about some of the areas where you can use LinkedIn if you are job searching. If you're not job searching, I also encourage you to keep it up to speed. You'd be surprised at how many professionals use LinkedIn to basically sift out talent. And we can talk a little bit about sort of the, I would say, surreptitious ways that somebody might reach out to you. So we'll go to the next slide. So LinkedIn defined is the online social network. And as you can see on the PowerPoint, there's over 30 million users in 150 countries. This is primarily, again, to the form of social networking that is for business professionals. So we're not going to see on LinkedIn, partying people and your dog and all that kind of cute stuff that you see on recipes. LinkedIn is really for professionals, and it's used to establish professional relationships. We also go back and forth with inviting. And so I know some people who in LinkedIn are very careful about who they click. Other people just click everybody. It's kind of personally up to you. Again, it's not Facebook. It's really a design so that you can network with industry professionals. It's free. There is the premium services. Are either of you two on LinkedIn? Did you subscribe to the premium?
No.
I am not.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise doing that, by the way. I think it's kind of, I'm asked that all the time. Should I get the premium service? I think it's not necessary. Even if you are job searching, it's not necessary. It basically gives you the opportunity to see who has looked at your profile. And even knowing that, it's not like you're going to email someone and say, hey, I see you looked at my LinkedIn profile. Do you want to hire me? Or you would never even follow up on it. So I don't really see the point. And I usually advise people, save your money, don't get involved. So it matches you with people who have the similar work histories. And there will be sort of these organizational areas where you can meet up. So if you graduated, from MCAD, there may be a LinkedIn group that you can join. It's totally up to you, obviously, if that's something you want to pursue, but those options are typically there. So overview of the LinkedIn uses. Again, it's an opportunity to look for clients, service providers, business employment opportunities, to job search, discover inside connections, postings, candidates, and it's just basically a way to network with industry professionals who are in your field. I'm not going to read each one of these because I remember when I was in college, I found that really, really boring. But if, ideas on how you can build up your network from connecting with people who have a vested interest in you, building your professional network, using LinkedIn as a tool to keep connected. And then, as I just mentioned, joining LinkedIn groups that are specific to either your college, grad school, other entrepreneurs, other graphic designers, every other web designers, whatever the case may be. It's also the opportunity, LinkedIn, to make people aware of who you are. So again, too, even if you're not job searching, you're happy where you're at, making sure that you're keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date. So let's say, you just worked on a software that you had never worked on, or you just put together some kind of presentation you never had done before. Well, now you've got a skill that you can certainly add to your LinkedIn profile. And then we've got here how to build a professional student LinkedIn profile. You want to craft an informative professional or profile headline that is also professional, and display an appropriate photo. So you really want to make sure that that photo looks professional. Show off your education, don't be shy, develop your professional summary statement, and fill in your specialty section with those keywords. One thing I recommend that people do, especially if you're job searching, let's say for your example, you're a graphic designer, you may want to not only look at your skills, talents, and abilities, but also look at job descriptions throughout your geographic area that you are going to be applying, and start consistently and uniformly looking for those keywords. Make sure those are represented then on your LinkedIn profile as well as your resume. Keep your status up to date. Weekly, again, fluid document only if it needs to be. Make sure that you keep connected in those groups, and you want to have diverse recommendations. So in other words, sometimes I'll look at LinkedIn and I'll see, 5 recommendations and they're all from the same company. You really want to have a diversity, not only in those job titles, but organizations and businesses. Claim your unique LinkedIn URL, and don't be shy about sharing your work. If you are a graphic designer, you definitely want to be able to display on LinkedIn your skills and your talents. How to network professionally online. 100% complete plus 100% more likely to get noticed. So basically what that's saying in a nutshell is don't leave LinkedIn blank. If you can fill in on LinkedIn, again, your skills, talents, and abilities, make sure that you have that completely filled out. And then you're more experienced than you think. A lot of times I work with students as well as alumni. Well, you probably have more experience than you realize. So this is the time, again, not to be shy about what you're going to bring to the table. Make sure you use your inbox. And, when we say get personal, we mean that by getting personalized with customizing your connections, your requests with friends, relatives, industry professionals. You really want this to be a robust opportunity to connect with anybody that's going to be connected with anybody. Join the in crowd. So another form of new online relationships, as we mentioned a couple times here, is join LinkedIn groups. And, here's the thing. If you join, you don't find any, and it's more annoying, it doesn't meet your needs, you can unjoin. So there is always that option. Do your homework before informational interviews or a job interview. Here's an opportunity to go into LinkedIn and look up the people you'll be meeting with. When I was looking for a job about, I would say, a year and a half ago, anybody that I'd be interviewing with, I'd go in, I'd look it up on LinkedIn, I'd find a connection. And as it turns out, someone I interviewed with graduated from Stout. I graduated from Stout. Guess what I'm going to talk about in the interview? And make that, you want to be able to make that connection. And now, last but not least, now step away from the computer. There's a perception that students are only comfortable in communicating online. So one thing you may want to do as well, as I just mentioned, that kind of human connection, is pick up the phone, click, hey, I'd like to connect with you. I'd like to, meet with you. I'd like to talk to you about an informational interview. I'm thinking of going off in this direction for my career path. Would you have time to talk with me? Computers are great, but they will never, ever replace the human voice or the human face. And that's it. I promise late. These are like very short and to the point. With that being said, does anyone have any questions on LinkedIn?
I have a question. Maybe this pertains to other people too, but I'm wondering if you have any advice for people who I'm currently in my path. And so on LinkedIn, I've kept it kind of bare bone because my current employer isn't aware of that, obviously.
You know what? Excellent. Yeah, excellent point. A lot of times people do use LinkedIn as a job search tool. That can become very, very dicey if your current employer does not know that you're job searching. So with that being said, a lot of times I see people who their tagline will be, immersed in, design, or immersed in graphic design, or immersed in animation community, that kind of thing. Yeah, in that way, then you're going to be looking and using LinkedIn more as a tool for you, as opposed for somebody finding you. You're going to find them. See what I mean?
Yep, that makes sense. Is there anything sorry.
Oh, you know what? We're kind of you cut out there. Can you repeat that?
That makes sense. It's like I want to open it up to people, but I'm going to have to wait until I do actually transition, I think. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So at this point, what you might want to be doing is just looking at profiles of industry professionals in their field. You can, when the time is right, then you send them a message. Hey, I noticed you're in blank, blank field. I'm very interested in potentially making a transition in this career path. Would you have some time for an informational interview? And that's how you start using LinkedIn as a tool.
Okay.
Because you can just sit all day and look at people and look at their jobs, but until you actually do something, it doesn't mean a whole lot, right?
Right.
And we can help you with that too. If you get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to job search. How do I do that without jeopardizing my current position? That could be a whole nother presentation. So we can help you with those steps too.
Okay, I will reach out to you guys.
That's good. We love the business. Any other questions on LinkedIn? Okay, we're going to now move on to a resume review, and Sam is going to start off this one.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I didn't want to overstep other people, but for recommendations, do you guys have a recommendation on how to get those? It's weird to ask people, but.
Sure. Well, kind of like back in the day, we used to ask for references, right? And then people would type out these long references. Sam is so great. She does this, she does that. Now it's all on LinkedIn. So, people will go in and they'll check off, yeah, Becky's really good at this, this, this. But then there is a section for recommendations, which back in the day would be called references. All you have to do is just get a hold of somebody and just say, hey, I'm building up my LinkedIn profile. Would you please write a recommendation for me on my LinkedIn profile? They do all of that and it goes right in. They just click it and send.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, what used to happen and what I noticed happened is I would ask people, hey, would you mind writing this? And everyone did. A couple people that I asked said, will you write it and I'll post it? I'm like, well, forget that. Mm-hmm. So you may get somebody who says, hey, well, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to accentuate on your skills, talents, and abilities? Mm-hmm. And that's okay to say, well, I think I really am good at blah, 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 blah. I feel that I've contributed this at this organization. If you could acknowledge that in the recommendation, that would be great. So it's the same theory as references. It's just all online now.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. And here's Sam. Ta-da!
Okay, here we go. All right, so this is our little resume presentation here. We can go over this briefly. There's a lot of text on here, so I'm sure you'll be able to just read that, and I can sort of breeze through this here. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. As you are all already, in a field, even if you're transitioning into a different one, I'm sure you already have a resume to build upon. So that's a little easier than starting from scratch. But basically, what is a resume? What's its function? A resume is brief and to the point. It's not a novel. We see a lot of very lengthy resumes here, and the fact is, no one really reads more than a page. And it's more important to be concise and to the point than to list absolutely everything that you've done in your professional or educational careers. Also, another important point that we say is that a resume is always an updated document. It's a fluid document. So it's not like, okay, I've created this resume that's going to work for, the next 6 months or whatever. It needs to continuously be updated. It needs to be updated to correspond to whichever position you are applying for. So it's always important to take a look at the job posting and make sure that the skills that are highlighted on your resume are being represented there and are being represented more prominently than maybe other skills that are not as applicable. So some employer facts. Employers are busy people, and resumes are typically reviewed between 5 to 7 seconds. So that corresponds to what I said earlier about resumes should only be 1 page long. No one is really going to read anything beyond that. Grammatical errors will be noticed. Some employers will probably notice them more than others, but it's better to be, safe than sorry. Make sure you run multiple spell checks. It helps to have multiple people look it over, really in depth, and just double check for any spelling errors, grammatical errors, anything there. Getting started. So the resume is about what you can do for the employer, not about you essentially as a person. A lot of the resumes that we end up seeing here have a lot of what we call soft skills listed. That's going to be things that are more characteristics than actual skills. So that's going to be things like, I'm a good team player. I manage my time. I communicate well. Those are all things that are going to be displayed through your cover letter and through just your professional presence anyway. Those sort of things would be expected of everyone applying for a job anyway. So you want to make sure that you stay away from listing those sort of things on your resume and stick with the hard skills, which are things that, you can employ to create an actual finished project. So the formatting, pretty basic overall, especially for, art and design students. It should be visually appealing with its format and the layout, and if you choose to add any colors, if you choose to create a banner or a logo, anything like that. And once again, 10 years of experience for 1 page of your resume. For the most part, everyone can do with just the one page. Font size, I wouldn't go smaller than an 8-point. Generally, I'd recommend probably around a 10-point. You can vary font size for, headers and different sections and things like that. But you want to make sure you stick with one font throughout the whole thing. And then you can differentiate between sections, and bullet points and things like that by utilizing bolding and italicizing and capital letters. You also want to make sure that you're aware of the margins. Make sure that there's, I know it says one inch all around, but I would say if it looks visually appealing and the formatting is cohesive, you might be able to alter that a little bit. Resume content. Most important thing is who you are, how to contact you, and a representation of your work. So you want to make sure that your phone, email, and a link to your digital portfolio or your own website is prominently displayed. The objective and or profile statement, that's going to be optional. Some people really like it, and some people, don't utilize it. Either or is fine. If you do choose to utilize one of those, you want to make sure it's very brief. It's not a biography, it's just a quick targeted statement highlighting some of your skills and or your career objectives. List your skills, as I mentioned, the hard skills, not the soft skills. What a lot of people do and what I generally recommend is listing the software and specialized equipment in one section under a bigger skills section, and then your actual design and or traditional art skills under another section. I would generally list education right up underneath your contact information if you are currently a student, because that's pretty relevant. The more years of experience you have, the further down on the page the education will be listed. So, if you're a graduate of, 5 or so years, I would recommend probably putting that down at the bottom, because your real world experience is going to be more relevant at that point. You want to list your work experience, even if it's not necessarily field related. We have students who come in and ask, okay, well, I had this part-time job. I've been there for a couple of years. Should I even list it? It's not really what I want to do. I would recommend yes, because, first and foremost, listing it shows that you can stay at a job, you can consistently show up for work, and then you could also list some tasks that may feature transferable skills in there. You also want to list any sort of volunteer experience and internships. And then if you're a member of any professional associations, you can list that at the bottom as well too. Things that should definitely not be included, hobbies or interests, unless, and that's, a big unless, the interest is directly related to the job to which you're applying. You want to make sure you leave off any other personal information like a birth date. Pictures shouldn't be put on there. References should be a completely separate document that it matches the formatting of the resume and cover letter, but you just have that on hand to provide upon request. And then you also wouldn't list addresses or phone numbers on the resume. Once again, that would be something that would be kept for you for your own reference. The contact info, basically pretty brief, phone number, landline, and or cell, email address, and then if you have a professional website, you'd want to make sure that you link that too. Or, a link to your digital portfolio if you don't have your own domain. So pretty basic there. Education, as I mentioned earlier, you want to list your education towards the top until later on. List your most recent education first, and then descending, as you go back further in time. High school isn't added, and then you want to make sure that you list your degree as it is written on the actual diploma. If you are currently in school, you would list your expected graduation date, and then just your anticipated month and year. If you had, some coursework at another school, you would want to list your start and end dates there to indicate that you did not attain a degree there, and then you would just want to list any relevant coursework. You want to make sure you include your GPA if it's 3.5 or higher. If not, just leave it off. And then you also want to list any awards or honors and scholarships that you attained while you were at that organizational industry location, and you can just list that within the education listing itself, or the organizational listing itself. Here's a few examples there for how to list a couple things. So the first one would be, place that you are currently, and then your expected graduation date. The bottom one there would be a place where, if you transferred, you took some courses but didn't actually attain a degree there. Some skills, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, identifies what you will bring to the company. This is going to be very specific. So your technical, design, and language skills, be it actual spoken languages or coding languages, anything like that. I would recommend using bullets or columns just for ease of viewing, for the reader. This is going to be one of the most relevant sections that the potential employer is looking at, so you want to make sure that they can just sort of zip through the page and hone in on what they're actually looking for. You also want to make sure that you are very consistent with terminology. This is especially useful if the company to which you're applying for, and most larger companies will use recognition software in their applications. So that means a lot of the time the first entity to even encounter your resume is probably not even going to be a human. It's probably going to be a program that will parse through your resume and just ensure that it lands upon those desired keywords. So you want to make sure that those are listed. There's a couple examples here. So technical skills, you could either call it technical skills, you could call it software and code languages, you could call it, technical skills, design or software, equipment, anything like that. There's a few languages there. Generally, you wouldn't list English in the languages section if you speak it, because the resume is already in English, so that's a given. Creative skills could be called design. If you're into more traditional art forms, you could list, traditional, however you want to format that. And then just, very basic informative listings there. Your experience, this would be your work experience. Some people do just call it experience and then include both work, so paid opportunities as well as internships. You want to list the most recent experience first, and then in descending order. Company name, and then you want to ensure that you list your city and state as well. Sometimes I see, a whole bunch of listings with just the company name, and I have no idea where it was. It's important for the employers to have a point of reference and be able to look up these places if they want. You can list your responsibilities in bullets, or you could just list it in sort of a sentence structure. So it would just be, phrase, comma, phrase, comma, phrase. That's basically it. Just be real brief. Once again, resumes are only looked at for a little bit, so you want to make sure that you really highlight your most prominent skills and the skills that you think would best be displayed to that company. You want to include the dates that you worked at the company, including the month and year you started and month and year you finished. You don't really need to be any more specific than that. They don't need a specific day. If you are currently working there, you would just list your current or the start date and then present. Once again, you want to make sure you're consistent with formatting. So if you set a precedent for, okay, the company name is going to be bolded and then the city and state is going to be italicized, make sure that that is reflected throughout each and every listing that follows. Here's a couple of an example. So this would be representative of not only the skills or the tasks that you're responsible for, but also any accomplishments. So pretty basic there. You want to make sure that you highlight your, academic recognitions, any extracurricular activities that you think might be relevant to the position. Include volunteer experience, any awards, recognitions, or scholarships, anything like that. There's a couple things. So that's how you would represent your membership in a professional organization. And references, as mentioned earlier, you do not include that on a resume. It should be a separate document that has consistent formatting, as the references document, cover letter, and resume should all cooperate and have a cohesive, branding or formatting, as it were. Ideally, 3 to 5 references. Should be people who can actually speak to the particular skills that you're highlighting. Make sure you actually speak to your references before you use them. There's nothing worse than a potential employer calling a reference and them being like, who? I wasn't prepared for this. I don't have anything to say. Take copies of your references to the interviews, but you don't need to provide them unless they ask for them. There's a quick example there. Just some contact information, their role, and their name. And here's just a quick sample resume. It's pretty basic and, is lacking any sort of personalization, which means, it doesn't have a colorful header or a logo or anything like that, especially for art and design students. The resume is a really good way to display some of your creative skills even before they click on your portfolio link. So I recommend people have, just a logo, a banner, anything like that. And we do have a guide, a resume guide that has even more examples too, which we can certainly share with you if you'd like it. There's another format that you might utilize. This would be generally utilized by someone who has a few years of experience, in the field already. And then this would be for someone who has been out of school for some time and has some achievements to speak of and highlight. And final step, pretty basic, but sometimes overlooked. Make sure it is proofread and spell check. Once again, I would recommend having a couple different people look at it. Sometimes you can get a little fatigued looking at the same document over and over, and even some really obvious errors might be overlooked. You want to make sure you save your resume in a standard format, and I would recommend always saving it as a PDF. That way, no matter where it's opened, on what computer it's opened, you can ensure that the formatting is always consistent. And as Becky mentioned, you're certainly free to reach out to us. We conduct resume critiques all the time, and we can edit your resume, scan it, send it back to you. We can certainly conduct resume critiques over the phone, although it is a little more difficult if we're not looking at the same sheet of paper at the same time, but we can certainly work with you and be aware of your schedule. And that's our contact information. Leif is able to, forward emails to us and everything too. And you can certainly reach out to us independently. So that is basically it. That's both of our presentations there. Does anyone have any questions about resumes that I can answer quickly here?
Do you recommend, again, sorry for the changing of careers path, do you recommend listing, or how do you, like my current job, I have a lot of different duties or whatever that you referred to that probably wouldn't apply to what I'm looking at. Should I just try to edit those out and only include duties or applicable things that could be used in another place?
Well, if you have a lot of listings to include, I would recommend just sort of paring it down to, the 2 or 3 most related skills that you think would carry over. I certainly would list the position, because that shows, as I said, that you can show up to work, you can be a professional. It shows you have experience having a job, which is important to display. But yeah, of course, with any listing, you want to make sure that the skills and responsibilities that you're highlighting are going to be the most beneficial to the position to which you're applying. Did that answer your question?
Sorry, yes.
Okay, great. Yep. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, sure, John. Yep.
So if I haven't had a job in 10 years, how do I go about making my resume relevant?
Sure. Well, what I would recommend is, I probably would list your last position, just it shows that you've held a professional position before. So that means the employer doesn't need to, train someone how to be an employee. After that, I would spend the majority of the resume focusing on your education and then the skills that you've been attaining during your time as a student. It's perfectly acceptable for someone to make a career shift and realize that they, want to go in a different direction. So you want to highlight the skills that you do have, and list that as just being more important, really, than any sort of employment gap. They probably would want to know about it, sort of what you were doing, in that time.
What have I been doing?
What have you been doing? So, if you had any volunteer roles, if you had any independent projects that you were working on at that time, you could certainly list those things as well.
All right. I think I'll have to make an appointment with you guys to.
Yeah, sure. No, you're more than welcome to. And we help build resumes from scratch, and then we can help edit existing resumes as well.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, whatever you've got, I would recommend sending it to us in advance, just so we can make sure we've got some, initial information, and then we can sort of go from there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to email either Becky or myself. We're happy to help with, not only resumes, but cover letters, job search assistance. If people, oh, sure, go ahead.
I was curious about the objective. How specific should that be? Like if I was interested in a few different avenues in the design field, how specific should the objective be?
In that case, I would probably recommend having like a profile statement or a profile summary instead of an objective.
Okay.
Because that way you can list your most, I don't know, I guess the skills that you would consider most important to yourself. So you can say, what I would recommend is something like, creative, then just for like we'll go with graphic design, creative graphic designer with intensive skills and, we'll say layout, logo design, and typography, seeking a position which allows me to utilize these skills and benefit the company. Just something super brief and to the point. It highlights your strongest 3 skills, and that can be utilized for a variety of different positions. And then if you are applying for specific jobs that list, 3 or 4 most important skills in applicants, you can include that in the statement if you feel that you have those skills. So it's, the resume and especially an objective or a profile statement, that's probably going to change for each job to which you apply, to be honest.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, everyone, to log in and listen to us talk for a little bit here.
Sam and Becky, thank you very much for donating your time today and providing some really good insight into both processes that these students have been thinking about this week. It's been very valuable.
Well, thanks so much for inviting us. And as I mentioned, if anyone has any questions or wants to contact us, don't hesitate to reach out.
And it is for just the office itself. It's careers@mcad.edu.
It is, yep. So it would generally either be myself or Becky, potentially our assistant, Lizzie, responding to those. But any one of us is more than happy to set up appointments and get back to you with any sort of resources that you might require. So
fantastic. And I dropped that email address, everybody, in the chat.
Yep.
And it is, I can't emphasize enough the resources there for you to use. It's a great use of your time to just bounce ideas off or to have some assessment of those professional documents that you have and your LinkedIn profile to see, like, what do you think? What are some ways that I could think about applying for this particular job? And other services that you offer, do you do mock interviews?
Sure. Yeah, we certainly can. We can do that. We can also assist in setting up sort of like third-party informational interviews. So those would just be essentially, interviews with a professional in the field that you're hoping to enter. Just giving you some feedback about the industry in general, and maybe some quick comments about, the skills that you're choosing to highlight in your resume, things like that. So that's another resource that might be useful. We also do have our own job board too, which we're currently adding. We add positions all the time, and these are positions that we've located ourselves and chosen to add, or that the organizations and employers have added themselves. And you're welcome to create accounts there. If you go to mcadcareerdevelopment.com, it'll take you to an area where there's 3 different login choices. You'd want to choose the student login. And then on the right-hand side underneath the username and password entry area, there's a little link that says full-time user, and you can go ahead and create an account there. I just verify student status of all the pending accounts, and then I activate it, and then you're more than welcome to go ahead and browse all the positions that are listed there. Most positions ask that you apply independently of the site, so meaning just send the requested materials, resume, cover letter, portfolio, and things straight to an email address that they provide. But you certainly can apply via that portal as well, if you'd like. But it's a really good resource to see what sort of things are being posted in your field of study. They list not only full-time and part-time jobs, but also internship opportunities. Sometimes there's calls for art on there. And we also try to list residencies too, if we can find them and get them up there.
What is that site again?
So it's www.mcadcareerdevelopment.com. And you can also get there if you go to the MCAD intranet. Yep, perfect. And then you go to resources and then career development. There's a pink link to the site there. And you want to make sure that you click on the student login option so you get to the right spot.
And are you available for alumni then too, since most of us are
always.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. So
you only have 3 weeks to talk to them. That's it.
That was my question.
Wow.
3 weeks.
No, ongoing, forever. So yeah, once when you're a student, you can certainly avail yourself of our department's resources, and then however often you want after that. So don't hesitate.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing some knowledge today.
Yeah, happy to help. Thanks so much for asking. Have a great rest of the day.